Good evening, everybody, and welcome back to Black Women in Architecture series. If you're new here, my name is Morgan Medley. I'm a high school student. I'm a senior at Enloe High School, and it's located in Raleigh. And I have the dreams and aspirations of becoming an architect. I'm also the founder of blackgirlsDRAW. My program works to expose elementary-age girls to the world of architecture with overall hopes of increasing the number of Black women architects one day. My Black Women in Architecture series highlights African American women architects. Over the last few months, I've had the opportunity to meet some very notable and inspiring Black women in the field. All of them inspire and motivate me so much. Each month, they lift my hopes and dreams of becoming an architect more and more. Tonight, it's my pleasure to introduce Miss Amma Asamoah, who will discuss her architecture journey and chat about the world of architecture and education. She's a full-time professor, advisor, and researcher at Tuskegee University. She's currently teaching third-year architecture design studio, sustainable design, ethnic Americans in the built environment. Her research themes focus on defining and creating architectural languages reflecting Black culture in Africa and diaspora within the built environment. Some of her ongoing projects include architectural construct consultants for the Carver Integrative Sustainability Center, urban agricultural site in Montgomery, Alabama, and she is the founder and lead designer for the Legacy Project in Wija, Ghana. Let us welcome Ms. Asamoah.
You make me feel so important. Hi, Morgan.
Hi, how are you today?
I'm doing well, thanks.
Thank you for letting me have you.
Thank you for inviting me.
So we're just going to start off with a few questions, just general questions about your journey and how you got to where you are today. And then I'm going to try to lean more towards an architecture teaching side of it.
Okay.
So I just want to start off by knowing where you're originally from.
So I was born in Brooklyn, New York, raised in New Jersey and Philadelphia. So I'm an East Coast girl overall.
And what were your interests in high school?
High school, I was into everything. I was playing classical flute. I was dancing. I was on the SGA. I'd been drawing since I could hold a pencil, so that was a no-brainer. But I was also into fashion design. And at the time, I was able to intern with a family friend who owned her own fashion company and had designed multiple lines in women's and men's clothing. And so I interned with her and learned how to sew and design as well. So anything design oriented.
And so when did your exposure to architecture and design come in?
That actually happened pretty early on, oddly enough. So both my parents are educators. My father was in the computer sciences and in accounting, and my mother is in chemistry. And so when I was younger and I was constantly drawing and doodling, my mom was just like, okay, she's got some artistic talent. You're going to be an architect. I was like, no, I want to be an artist. I want to be a fashion model, blah, blah, blah. I think I was 6. I want to be a fly girl in a living color too. So all of the things. And she's like, no, you're going to be an architect. I'm like, well, what is an architect? So at the time, we didn't have Google or the internet. It was Encyclopedia Britannica or World Book. So she's like, look it up. That was her answer to pretty much everything. Look it up in the encyclopedia. So I went on doing my little 6-year-old research, and I used to look up buildings in Encyclopedia Britannica, National Geographic I was obsessed with, and also Architectural Digest. Once my father found out that this is what she's going to do, or this is what she's interested in, he got a subscription to Architectural Digest. So I would go in there and draw and copy buildings.
And so growing up, after doing your research, did you have any architects or more specific Black women architects that you actually looked up to?
Had no idea. Absolutely no idea. Didn't even think at the time that was something that I should venture out to find out more about. I just knew that I was kind of obsessed with different buildings. It didn't occur to me to actually reach out to an architect or even find a Black woman architect that I could look up to or be mentored by.
Mm-hmm. And I know with my story, I know I've said it a lot, but it was weird because I knew in middle school I thought I wanted to be a lawyer, and then I got to high school and I just took one class of drafting, and it just changed my life completely. Like I didn't, and taking the class, it was like, okay, this is something that's interesting, but I didn't know if it was something I wanted to do on a daily basis because I guess I was still learning it and still trying to realize if I actually liked it or not. And
Mhm.
it's just I just fell in love with it. And talking to all these different African American females about it, it's just changed the way that I view it. And it's made me realize that I do like architecture, but I also like the more cultural and like ethnic type of architecture, I guess. I like doing like drawings or like researches about different buildings that change the communities or different like community style architecture, I guess. I don't know how to really explain it. I don't know if there's like a name for it. Me and my dad have been trying to figure out
Sounds
what it
like
is.
community development is
Yes.
the thing.
Yeah,
So
that's
yeah.
what Miss Dina Howard, she said something about it, and I think I started digging more into it. And then different projects that I've been doing this year in school for my architecture classes, it's kind of like made me realize that I like architecture, but I also like this type of architecture. So I think that's what I'm gonna lean more towards after
And
I get
that's
out of
awesome that
college.
you've had that exposure early on to know that, okay, this is a specific passion of mine, like this is a specific area of architecture that I want to go in because it can be very broad.
Mm-hmm.
Me, early on, it was just like the obsession with national monuments of different places. So it was like the pyramids, the Taj
Yeah.
Mahal. It's like, oh my God, this is amazing. I was completely obsessed with Japanese architecture for a very long time. And I told my parents, like, I'm going to Kyoto and speak a lick of Japanese. I'm going to Kyoto for architecture school and I'm going to do this and that. And my parents were just like, okay, well, sure.
So during high school, what classes did you take, or like other than like art classes, what type of classes helped you out more when it came to college?
I want to say physics. I was always very like intrinsically artistic, so that came naturally. But physics was like my jam. I don't know what it was. I guess because I got to draw pictures to figure out the problems.
Mm-hmm.
So the problem solving aspect of it really got me. Unfortunately, my mother was a chemistry teacher. I understood no chemistry. Like till this day, is like, okay, lambda, new wavelengths. Um, it didn't make any sense to me. I love geometry, calculus, trig. So I liked math, and I also was into the physical sciences. So um, biology, how nature impacted your body. I do remember taking like geography, and at some point I had exposure to like a color theory class
Mm-hmm.
or a color theory project. I can't exactly remember what it was, but I was like completely amazed at how different colors and different spaces and environments impacted your mood. So that further fed my drive to go into architecture.
So did you ever take into consideration like architectural engineering, or was it just straight architecture?
I did take into consideration architectural engineering. I had actually, I don't know what it was that turned me off about it, but yeah, I was like, I'm going to do architecture and architectural engineering because my family had gassed my head up real good. And it was like, I could do all these things. It's going to be amazing. I don't know what it was. It might have been like Calc 3. I was like, I got to take more of this in college if I do engineering.
Mm-hmm.
Nah. So that maybe that killed it, but I considered it, just didn't go through with it.
Yeah, I consider it as well. Like right now, I'm taking a architectural engineering elective, and I'm also taking a advanced studies architecture class. And I've throughout the years, like I've just learned that architectural engineering is just not for me. I don't know. I don't know what it is. I just feel like it just. I don't know. I just
I think
didn't really.
found out you got to draw, like actually design less, and you were more like
Yeah.
actually figuring out calculations more. Then I
I.
was like,
it just, I don't know. It's not that I couldn't get it because like I understood it, but it was just like, I don't know if I can do this for a living. I like more of like the drawing and the floor plans and the different stuff like that. So I took the class just for like, I guess, more exposure to it, just to see if maybe like something in here will hit me. And it's like, oh, that's interesting. But so far, nothing has hit me yet.
And that's totally fine.
Yeah. And I know, right. Well, I applied to A&T, and then I found out they didn't have just an architecture class. They had landscape architecture or architectural engineering. Mm-hmm. And I took in consideration the landscape architecture, but then I was like, I don't want to limit myself to something just because of the school. Because like I know A&T is like a big school, but it's like if they don't have what I want, then
right.
I guess it's just gonna have to.
Extremely important. You should definitely attend a program that interests you or offers you something that you can, follow your interest and your passion in. It helps to be able to get different exposure now. So it's great that you're able to take like these different electives in architectural engineering and kind of figure out ahead of time, is this something that I really want to do? Because there are so many different paths that you can take within the field. But I mean, of course, you'll get more exposure to it once you go into school, but it helps to kind of go on the, school websites, find out what the faculty are researching and what their focuses are, so that you have a better understanding of what you'll be learning. Because a lot of times, us as academics, we will tie our research into the design studios, as long as it's in alignment with like the overall goals of the school or the department, of course.
And I know I'm taking it's like a mentoring program, and we have to do a project. It's called ACE. That's what the mentor group is called. And right now we're building a tiny house trailer for an architect, and they have to live there for like a couple years because they're working on a project. And it's all like made up, but it's like, it's cool. It's because we do different, I guess, workshops, but it's all virtual. But like they have different people come in and present. And so far we've learned about like engineering and then construction and then like the mechanical part of it. And it's just good to know that I've dipped and dabbed into each, I guess, section of it to really figure out which one I really like and which one is just not for me, I guess. So what schools did you apply for college, and then what schools did you attend?
So my father pushed me to apply to Yale, even though I had no intention of going to Connecticut. I am not a cold weather person at all. I'm just like, why is this a good idea? I applied to University of Hawaii, Pratt, and I think that's it. High school was a while ago, so I didn't realize how long ago that was. But yes, it's been some time. I couldn't date myself, but it's been some time. What I actually ended up doing, however, because it seemed like a more economical choice at the time, because I didn't get full scholarships to any of the schools that I'd applied to, I said, oh, and I also was going to apply to A&T's architecture engineering program. And then I found out it was just architecture engineering.
Yeah.
Like, nope, that's not my ministry. So I ended up attending Community College of Philadelphia for 2 years. And what they offered was like a 2-year program, and then you could transfer into Drexel University's architecture program. So that was like my plan. I was going to stay in Philadelphia, etc. And then life threw me a curve because I got a scholarship to go study abroad. Randomly applied to propose this research project with the Gilman International Scholars Program. And they focused primarily, well, at the time they focused primarily on junior colleges. So they would give you the money to study abroad for a semester in any foreign country. You just had to propose a project within your area of study that made sense. And then, of course, present it when you got back. So I was awarded the scholarship. I really wanted to go to Japan. Like, I was still on that. And my dad was like, no, you must go to Ghana and you will learn about your heritage. So I ended up going to the University of Ghana and at Legon, and that completely changed my life and my path in terms of research in architecture. While I was there, I met a young lady who convinced me that Tuskegee was all of the things, and I should apply to transfer there. And so when I got back from Ghana, I did. I got accepted to the program and came down, and this is where I finished out my bachelor's of architecture.
So what was your experience like at Tuskegee School in general, but then also the architecture portion of it?
So, like I mentioned, in high school, I was involved in everything. So at Tuskegee, I did the same thing. I got involved in NOMUS, AIS coming kind of right out the bat. Any of the student organizations that had to do with architecture, I was involved. If there was a community project or something of that nature, outreach, whatever, I was in it. It was just a very nurturing environment. Still, what's interesting is being the junior faculty at the school now, most of my professors are still there. So it's like, now these are my actual colleagues and mentors, but they had me as a student. So I hope they see some growth. But yeah, I just got involved in everything I possibly could that was design oriented. If a friend of mine was involved in like a fashion show or something, I would sew for them. We would hold open mic nights and things of that nature. So anything creative, it was great. So we just kind of came together and became this very creative and artistic family.
And so what was it like, I guess, being an architecture student in general, whether it was throughout all the different schools you've been to?
It's intense. It's intense. It's a lot of work. And I definitely would say that it's something that you should be passionate about, because no matter how efficient you are or intend to be, it just takes a lot of time to produce architecture projects at a certain level. And what is interesting in architectural school, you're responsible for as one person, you're responsible to design an entire project. Whereas when you go to a firm, and all of that would, be breaking off and tasks would be delegated to different people. Whereas at the university, like, you might have what would be considered a $3 million project or program that you have to design on your own, and you're staying up for nights and sometimes weeks on end to achieve a certain quality of work. So it's hard work. It's fun. I can say at Tuskegee, we would live in the studio. At the time, we had desktops. So like, one student was the DJ and we would have music playing. Somebody else would go on a food run and bring everybody back food. We had little places where people would rest, take a nap. All right, we sleep in a cycle. Somebody's getting up. That's just how we supported each other. But I can say that the level of rigor and attention that it takes to complete projects is kind of universal within architecture programs. I'm not certain that familial bond is the same with every architecture studio. I just know that was my experience.
Especially if somebody asks, how did you manage your time with your studies and the organizations that you were involved in?
Fortunately, many of the organizations that I was involved in were in the architecture department. So I was just in the architecture department all the time. Whereas there were students who were in the band, in the choir, in other groups on campus. I don't know how they did it. It just helped that my particular stuff had to do with architecture. So I centered all of my, well, not all of my, but the majority of my social and extracurricular activities in that.
And so how much harder would you say it would be for a student with no exposure to, I guess, be in the architecture major instead of a student like me having taken different drafting classes and learning the different softwares already?
I think it's less of a shock. It's less of a learning curve. Having some exposure ahead of time and kind of understanding some level of design thinking ahead of time helps. Being that I came in as a transfer student, there was definitely a certain skill set that I already had because I was older than some of my classmates, and I already like studied abroad and had some additional exposure prior to coming to the 5-year program at Tuskegee. So I would say that kind of helped me because I had already had the exposure to programs, so that you're getting that in high school. It's definitely a benefit. And I can see amongst my students that have had the access to these programs that we typically use prior to enrolling definitely have, a heads up.
And with those programs, like which specific ones do you guys, I guess, really use? Because I know that with me taking classes in school, I've known how to use AutoCAD and like Revit and Inventor. And then I've also used SketchUp. And then like for the different projects I've used, most people have recommended me to use SketchUp because I guess it's a good landscaping type of application.
Yeah, overall, SketchUp is just an excellent, it's a very user-friendly tool. And it helps you to kind of conceptually visualize things very easily without a lot of extra coding or some other things. Like Rhino can be very involved. AutoCAD is definitely a good basis to have because AutoCAD does everything to scale. And that's a lot of times when we come into architectural school, within those first 2 years, a lot of the hurdles are getting students to understand scale, precedence, how space should be used, how things should be oriented. So the fact that you have some knowledge of that ahead of time, especially AutoCAD, Revit is very heavy in the industry now. Photoshop and Adobe Creative Suite is excellent to have in terms of like graphic design and developing your different presentations. SketchUp, already I said, was an excellent tool. And then there are a number of like rendering plugins and platforms that you could get into. But for now, I think it's great to look into. I'm an architectural magazine nut, so it's great to go into architectural magazines and see how people problem solve for different things that come up, because at the end of the day, that's what we're doing. I mean, it's great if the building looks nice and it functions well and all of that, but you are building for people. So it's interesting to see how people all over the world are problem solving using space and design. So I would definitely not only look at the programs, but keep abreast of what's happening worldwide in the field of architecture and how people are addressing different issues.
So can you go into a little detail about design thinking? I know my dad's trying to like introduce it to me, and like I've heard it a lot in my interior design class, but I need, I guess, a little bit more insight of what it is.
So design thinking for me, I guess it's strategic thinking and problem solving. So to be able to develop a quality space or solve a specific design problem based on the needs of your client or the needs of the end user, the environmental conditions, social conditions in the area, cultural impacts. So you're taking all of those things into consideration. Of course, lighting, color, all of that comes into play, but it's basically analyzing these different aspects and then incorporating them into a final thing that works. I hope that makes sense.
It does, because I feel like it was explained the same way for one of my classes, I guess. Because I guess we were watching some video and she wanted us to go through the design thinking process of creating, I guess, more space for someone that's homeless, living in like with a whole bunch of kids, and they're living in like a tiny house. So it's kind of, you explained it the same way. I just think I needed more of like a verbal way of hearing it, other than just reading it and trying to like understand what it is.
And that's why I think it's cool, really, to like look into architectural. I like TED Talks. I like listening to architectural lectures, because you get to understand, especially with firm principals, how they process all of the information that you have to bring to the table to create a space, be it an outdoor space, be it for a large group of people, or, you know, a small residential unit. There are so many factors that come into play, that don't involve, you know, major things like the structure and, you know, back and things of that nature. But to be able to combine all of those together after you've analyzed and researched all that information is what develops architecture.
So I see somebody asked, did you struggle with any of the, well, we'll go with this one. What subjects should a student take in middle school and high school to prepare for a field in architecture?
I would definitely suggest being very strong in the areas of math and science. Most of the universities, the programs have a core curriculum where you have to complete a certain level of mathematics, a certain level of physics. Some may require a biology or chemistry elective, depending on what institution you're going to. But I would definitely look into the university and see what their requirements are, so that you have a better understanding of what to prepare for or register for in high school. If you have access to a drafting class or a graphic design class or something of that nature, that is always excellent. I love YouTube University, because there are so many videos that you could just pull out and strengthen your skills. I mean, seriously, there are times when I'll be explaining something and my students are looking at me like, what? So I'm like, okay, here, go to this link. Maybe this person explains it better. Maybe they could better get it across to you. But there's so much information just on the internet that you might not get access to, depending on where you go to school, and what those offerings are. So if you are really passionate about it, I would say look into graphic design, look into developing a design portfolio if you're artistically inclined. If you like to draw, understand what drafting is. If you like to build things and make things with your hand, understand what architectural modeling is. Like, really dig in and do the research, especially since, being that we have the internet, there's so much access to information just at your fingertips.
So somebody said, did you struggle with any of the work doing it on your own? And because she said, I know you mentioned breaking out and doing projects on your own. How did you stay focused?
I think I need some clarification with that. When you're speaking about doing work on my own, what is it, please?
I think like projects, like I know how you said that in college and in the architecture major, instead of having like a big group of people, like how you would in a firm, how did you do all of it by yourself, I guess?
I harass my professors. I absolutely, positively harass my professors. I've had to apologize to the spouses of my professors for how much I called them during the time that I was in school. But I spent a lot of time in the architectural library doing research, a lot of time online. And then what's intrinsic about architecture is, even though you have a individual program that you're focused on developing as a student, at your desk, what's great is having your peers around to learn from. So that peer-to-peer interaction really helps, because while you might be looking at something one way, someone else might have a completely different perspective. And that's really one of the benefits I found with attending Tuskegee University, because at HBCUs, people are coming from all over the world, literally, and everybody has some different background and experience, and having that input from all those different people from different regions all over the United States and really all over the world really helped me better to develop design solutions as a student.
So with working at Tuskegee and actually being one of the students, what is the architecture requirements for the program?
For the program. So the way our program is set up is your first 2 years at Tuskegee or your pre-professional program within architecture, your pre-professional program, and that's when you would fulfill your core requirements. So your math, your sciences, Englishes, you do have architectural courses, but that's helping you to develop understanding of the basics of design thinking and the theory, and I think you do get architectural history in the first 2 years as well. So you're getting exposure to design overall, you're getting projects, so you're being involved in design studio. It's intense. So that first year kind of determines like, all right, do I really want to not sleep for the next 4 years? Like, is this really a plan for me? And then in the second year, spring semester, you're required to submit an architectural design portfolio to a review board, which consists of faculty members, and we also review the students' curriculum sheet to see that they're on track to graduate on time, and that you've fulfilled all the requirements ahead of time. And then depending on where you stand, you may get admittance into the actual professional program. So with that, that's when like the grind really sets in, and that's where I've been placed at third year studio. So that's like, all right, now it's getting intense. You are expected to do a lot more and problem solve a little more independently. We expect that, being that we've reviewed your portfolio and everything of that nature, we expect that you've kind of got the basic skills. You've got your toolbox. So now let's really fully explore and put all these different things together to develop some different architecture. And then as you go throughout the different studios, there are different focuses that we have. So it might be you're focusing on a community design project one semester, and then another semester you might be doing something that's internationally based. Or another semester you might be doing something that's city planning based on what year you're in. So there are different professors, of course, that focus on different areas or have specific backgrounds or expertise. So depending on which professor you have, they will, of course, assign you something that fits within the curriculum and the overall goals for the school, but kind of plays into their interest as well, or their expertise, I would say.
And I know with like, since the internet is like right there in front of us, my parents have actually been really helpful with actually going to like the school and like look the school's website and being able to look at the, I guess, curriculum and the requirements for each year. So I've been able to actually sit down and put all of my top schools side by side and be able to say like, okay, if I go to this school, this is what I'd be taking like my first year, and being able to compare it to, I guess, another school. And like most of the schools that I've looked at, it's like not to jump straight into architecture, but most of your classes are like all geared towards the same thing, which I actually really enjoy. Instead of like, if I was to have, I guess, a more broad major, I'd just be taking more like general ed courses. I like how most of the classes are geared to more towards like my major and what I want to actually do.
Yeah, I think because architecture is not one of those things where you can just like take English the first 2 years and then jump into and you'll be fine. You really gotta prepped and groomed for it. So having architectural courses within your first 2 years is essential. And some students, they stick with it. Others go into other majors. There are students that have come in from like engineering programs because they wanted something different or something more. So it really does depend on the students and their interest and their level of dedication. And it helps to have family support, because while they might be behind you theoretically, there's a lot that goes into it. And architecture school and education in general tends to be more expensive than some other majors. There's a lot more investment into design programs and materials and things of that nature. So you really have to take all of that into consideration once you're going into it. Like, okay, tuition's paid, but these here books, these supplies, modeling materials, you'll get those for free. So just take all of that into account. Another thing I would encourage all students who are interested in any program, architecturally or otherwise, is to look into the accreditation criteria for your particular program and understand whether or not that actually has any impact on your professional accreditation or professional certifications going forward after graduation. So it really does require you to do a lot of planning and looking ahead. I was not aware of what accreditation was. I just knew I wanted, Tuskegee was the bomb and experience, and George Washington Carver, this is going to be great. Booker T is dope, so I'm dope. Like, the mindset was very naive and uninformed. But if you are to go on any accredited architecture school's website, you will have the National Architecture Accreditation Board's reports on that school's website, because you're required to post that information as an academic institution. And you can find out, where that particular school ranks, what resources they have, what type of research they've been working on, what type of projects they've assigned. You can also reach out to department heads or advisors such as myself and get an actual student and have conversations with them about some of the projects that they have had the opportunity to get involved with, and see whether or not your interests line up. So those are two huge things that I would encourage a student who's invested in architecture or interested in going into architecture to do.
Yeah, I know this summer, we started applications, just to get them started, I guess, and then we focused more on the essay, but we started them in July, August. It was really, really early. And during the process, we talked to all of the schools that I was going to apply to. And we even went in, I know before COVID, we visited Hampton and Howard. And then back when I was a freshman, maybe, or I was a sophomore, it was one of the two. I went and I visited Tuskegee. And then during COVID, a few months ago, we went and we visited Morgan State. And we also did A&T, but that's so close by. It's I don't even know. It's a couple hours drive away, but it was just good being able to hear, talk to the people, the head of the programs, and actually hear them rave about each of the schools that I've been to and just how good all the schools are, I guess, and just talk about their school in specific. And I guess it was good to know that background knowledge before actually applying to the school, and then taking into consideration if I actually wanted to go to the school. And I think that's when I not pushed A&T to the back burner, but I was okay, it's an option, but I don't want to limit myself just because everybody knows the school, I guess.
Right.
But talking about Tuskegee, how big are the class sizes, and are there any study abroad opportunities in the program?
Yes. So study abroad is always a passion for me. It will forever be. I think it's a life-changing experience. If you have the opportunity, you should definitely do it. So as far as Tuskegee is concerned, it really does depend on the year of the class that you're in. In your core courses that you're taking university-wide, like your Englishes, math, physics, and things, of course, those classes are going to be larger. We're a small populated school with a big campus. However, that gives you an opportunity to have more one-on-one interaction with your professor. So I remember studying abroad at the University of Ghana, being in an auditorium with hundreds of students, and my professor had no idea who I was, and I was okay, I definitely don't want to do this again. It was completely a bad idea. And so what I love the level of intimacy that Tuskegee brings to that familiar atmosphere. So within your architectural classes, like I said, first year you will typically start out with a pretty large class, because all the students have applied, get into architecture, they think it's the bomb, they don't really know what to do. And then some of them, continue on with the program, and some of them decide that they want to do something else, or the level of dedication that it requires is not for them, which is completely fine. Second year, the numbers start to whittle down, and then of course it's who actually got admitted into the professional program. So going into the professional program, you might have a studio class of, on average, 15 students, which is great because it gives you a good balance for students to interact with one another. Like I said, that peer-to-peer learning is extremely important. Everybody kind of knows what strengths the other has by that time, because you're traveling with the same students from freshman year on to graduation, hopefully. And I think that size is definitely workable. And having access to your professors right away is extremely helpful. So, you know, on average, a studio class size, I would say about 15.
Okay. And so, more of like a personal question: how important do you think it is to expose architecture to young girls in public?
Wow, that's a heavy question. So I'm a mother of four. I have one daughter, and I think being one, we as minorities, Black women, we are underrepresented in the field, and we have so much more interaction with our homes historically and the built environment, and how our children are reared within those spaces. Like, we're typically the ones that are more hands-on with the growth and development of our actual children and the development of our future. So I think it's extremely important for women, especially Black women, to get more involved in the built environment and understanding what that looks like and how it impacts your child socially, psychologically, emotionally, because all of those things help you grow into a, you know, thriving adult or human being. So that's my short answer. There was another question you asked me earlier about study abroad programs, and I didn't do that in my rambling. So I want to double back to that really quickly. There are a number of opportunities for students to do study abroad university-wide, and also during the summer, certain faculty may embark on different research projects that afford students to do not just a broad study, but national study, which is extremely important because, like, for instance, Tuskegee, we have a minor now in historic preservation. So that gives students the opportunity to get involved with a number of national historic preservation associations and really dig into deep to preserving our history in our communities. So we've done work with the Civil Rights Trail, places in Wyoming, Washington, D.C. that are all related to our history. And then in terms of study abroad, I know that professors have taken students to Indonesia, South Africa. Some students have done independent study to Ecuador. I'm trying to think where else the students have been as of late. We had a number of students who were applying for the same scholarship that I'd applied for, because I act as a Gilman International Scholars Advisor as well. And unfortunately, due to COVID, we had to put those applications on hold, but there's definitely some more interest in students doing some more abroad work. And then I myself, as a professor, have got involved with an organization called CPDI Africa, which focuses on people getting exposure to African-based architecture throughout the diaspora and on the continent. And so there are opportunities for students to possibly go study abroad in Ghana and things of that nature. But the whole study abroad thing is pretty simple. It's just a matter of getting funding. You can go to the study abroad office, apply to a program, make sure, similar to what you would do if you were transferring to a school, make sure your courses kind of line up with the university course offerings so that you can transfer that credit over. And if it's approved, then you go for whatever period of time. For architecture students, a lot of times it's easier to do a study abroad program over the summer versus for the semester long, because you don't want to risk not graduating on time. It's already a 5-year program more often than not. So those are things to take into consideration. And also certain schools might have a specific place that you'll go to built into your particular architecture program. I know when I was at Tuskegee, we had the opportunity to go to Italy, Germany. I had the opportunity to intern in Germany, travel to Italy during the summer, and then where else did we go? Austria. So it just kind of all depends on where your interests are, and pulling a specific professor aside and saying, hey, I want to apply for this thing. More often than not, you'll have the support.
So what is it like being, I guess, in the education part of the architecture? Like, what made you want to come back to Tuskegee and teach?
Oh, man. That's a very long personal story. So I really wanted to get back to the South. That had been a very nurturing environment for me. Tuskegee had been a very nurturing environment for me, a creative environment for me. And so over the years, I kept in touch with Dr. Daniels, who is the head of the Department of Architecture at Tuskegee. And he's been my mentor. It's kind of stuck with me for a long time, whether he liked it or not. And so I just kept telling with him kind of the different things that I was involved with. Unfortunately, when my father passed away, he was in the process of developing a project in Ghana. And so I had that, of course, the task of kind of completing that project. And I was talking to him and like, oh, I would really love to kind of bring this to the students and do a design charrette and, you know, figure out ideas of what we could do with this property. And so that's kind of what drew me back in. And at the time, this was around February when we typically hold our design and construction management expo in the department. And so he's like, yeah, come on down, you know, do a design charrette, interact with the students, see what ideas you can come up with. And I just really enjoyed interacting with the students. Like, they were very passionate, very talented, very engaging, and that kind of stuck with me. So I told Mr. Daniels, like, I would pop up at homecoming, like, yo, y'all got any positions? Let us sister know what's going on. 2019 of August, I got a phone call from Dr. Bell, the dean of our school, who was also one of my professors at one point in time. And she was like, yeah, we need an adjunct. You still willing to come down here? I'm like, yes, that would be great. I was actually looking for a full-time position in Atlanta at the time, but I knew in my heart if something opened up at Tuskegee, I was there. And I don't know what type of pull the university has on us that we're just so in love with this space. But it was like, all right, cool, bet, whatever. Mind you, I'm very afraid of bugs, and Alabama has some huge ones to take that. So I was like, I'm willing to go back and deal with the bugs and the heat and all of the things to have this experience with the students. And one of the best decisions I made in my life, for sure.
So I know Ms. Sablon, she talked about, I guess, the story of the bricks at Tuskegee. So can you, I guess, like kind of like sum up like what it is? Like, what is the story about?
So in short, when the university was founded over a century ago by Dr. Booker T. Washington, there was nothing here on the campus. And we, being the industrious people that we are historically, Dr. Washington said, all right, we need buildings. Then our students need to learn brick making. And so they investigated the properties of the soil, and Alabama is known for like its red clay-based soil type. And the students at the time made bricks with their own hands under the tutelage of Dr. Robert R. Taylor, who was the first African American to graduate from MIT's architecture program. They designed and built most of the buildings that are still standing on the university's campus. So that's the short story about the bricks.
Okay, and so with me being a senior and planning to major in architecture, and like, you know, Tuskegee being one of my choices, why would you recommend me going in?
Wow. I would say just really having the earnest support of the staff and the faculty there is a big deal. I've had a lot of experience in architectural schools simply because I traveled around a lot to visit people at different institutions. Sometimes on break, I would go visit some of my classmates who were at like Temple or Syracuse or something of that nature. And, you know, just sit in on their studios and look at their reviews and things of that nature. And architecture can be very brutal. The people in the field are not always receptive to a brown or a black face. And so to be in a space where you understand that your voice matters, your representation matters, just that sense of belonging and having a nurturing environment and knowing that your professors are going to boost you up and not destroy you when it comes to whatever design ideas you may have or wherever you might fall short, whatever research proposals you may have. I've heard so many stories about Black women in architecture coming out of architecture school and, you know, in their final year, throwing things away, throwing projects on the ground, destroying models, destroying drawings of the students, just totally tearing them down and destroying them, like emotionally and morally, and students like giving up. I never had that experience at Tuskegee. Granted, I was a relatively good student the majority of the time. But it takes a certain level, like I said, of dedication and time, and to put all that time and energy into a project, and be coming from a place a lot of times where you haven't had exposure to an architect, or, you know, daddy doesn't have somebody at the office that works in the field all the time. There are definitely students in the department who did have that experience, but more often than not, that is not the case. So to be able to see professors that look like you and are encouraging of you in the profession and are encouraging you to get licensed, and pushing for you and rooting for you and really working on your behalf, I think that's the benefit of coming to Tuskegee. That's my spiel.
I know with me still being in high school, like my experience with it, I've always been like the only female, and I've always been the only Black person in the class. So when me and my dad started applying, I told him, I was like, to be honest with you, I only want to apply to HBCUs, and it was like a limited number of them, but I was like, I'm willing to take that risk if it's out of state, because I want to be surrounded for the first time in forever with students that want to do the same thing I want to do, and we're all trying to uplift each other. Like, we know it's all like not secretly a competition, but we don't want to see anybody get left behind. We all want to, I guess, like be successful together. So I think that was one reason why I was like, I'll apply to PWIs, but my main focus is HBCUs. And I was like, with just everything going on in this world and all of Black Lives Matter and all this stuff, it's just been really eye-opening to see like our vice president is a Howard grad. Like, it's just, I don't know, it's really inspiring. So I was just like, I've just made up in my mind that if I attend an HBCU, I would just be completely happy regardless of which one is that.
Yes, to all of that. And the thing about it is kind of building that level of confidence in yourself during your time in school is extremely important. I've gotten emails from students at PWIs, or like, you know, my professor has, no understanding or no clue of what Black architecture or hip hop architecture looks like, if you have any preferences that you, can guide me towards, or equitable architecture for that matter, or they just totally disregards my thoughts and ideas or things of that nature, like really having the support system from, first year on out and throughout your alumni life. Like, some of my lifelong friends are people that I met here at the university. We've all gone our separate ways and experienced different things, but when it comes down to it, it really is it's a family. So take all of that into consideration, because being that architecture is such an intense field of study, it can weigh on you mentally. And like you said, with everything that's going on in the world, we're in the midst of a pandemic, it really helps to have an earnest support system, or just being able to go and sit in your professor's office or give your professor a call and say, look, I'm going through X, Y, Z. This is what's happening. What can I do to just get to the next step? While I'm handling these personal things in my life is very important. I've had professors look me in the face at a PWI and tell me they don't care. I don't care that so-and-so died in your family. I don't care that this, that, or a third is happening in your life, that it doesn't impact me in any way, shape, or form. We are really dedicated to you becoming an architect or doing well in the profession. So I would say that is the benefit of attending at HBCU. And definitely, if you did for some reason decide to go to a PWI, get involved in your NOMAS chapter. I can't say negative about doing that. NOMAS has been an extremely important support system. And mind you, I acted as AIS president and NOMAS president during my time at Tuskegee in undergrad. So I understand what both of the organizations bring to the table. And NOMAS was definitely the same, like, supportive family feel. Like, even when I got on here, people from NOMAS hit me up like, oh, you're going to be on blackgirlsDRAW. I'm like, how do y'all know everything that's going on in my life now? But yeah, like the lifelong friends and mentors through that organization. So I would definitely encourage you to get involved with that as well.
So I just want to ask, like, our final question, like, what's one word of advice you would give me, or you would give another young, it doesn't even have to be a girl, just a student in general. What would be one word of advice about architecture that you give them?
Know that you are going into a white male dominated profession, and that does not make you any less valuable. In fact, it makes you more valuable because we're so underrepresented and misunderstood worldwide. So as a student from a background of whatever culture you come from, whatever you have to bring to the table is valuable and important, and you should fight to express that no matter what environment you are in, because at the end of the day, we as architects create the built environment. We help shape communities and lives. So if your voice is not heard, and your background is not accounted for, then who speaks for you? Who speaks for your family? Who speaks for your children? So never mute yourself or shrink yourself on behalf of thinking, these people know better than me because they're more dominant in the field. You have value.
Well, I just wanted to say thank you so much for letting me speak to you tonight, and I really appreciate it because it really gave me, I guess, an insight of the teaching aspect of it, rather than like somebody that actually works in a firm all day. So I really do appreciate it, and it was really nice to be able to like hear the different sides of it.
I'm so glad I had something of value to offer to you, and feel free to contact me anytime with questions. And this was a great opportunity, so thank you, Morgan.
And hopefully we'll be able to meet you when we come down there to visit. I think we're going to come sometime next month because we set up the virtual meeting, virtual tour of it. But then I think it was the same week that my dad planned to want to come down there. So I don't know which one we're going to do yet, but I think we're going to.
I'll be here. We'll do the things. It'll be great.
Well, I just want to thank everybody for watching, and I hope that you guys stay in touch and stay connected through Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and I hope to stay in touch with you guys, and we'll be posting our next live information soon. And coming up, I think we're going to start back my mini sessions with the girls. So I just want to thank everybody, and I hope you guys have a good night.
Thank you.
You.
Good night.
You're welcome.